She'd been driving the same school bus route through rural Montana for 14 years, transporting kids safely to school every morning and home every afternoon. Just a friendly woman in her 50s with a warm smile who knew every child's name and always had encouraging words, until a winter storm hit harder than forecasted and the main road became impassable. That's when the parents discovered that their dependable bus driver wasn't just good at keeping schedules. She was a former Army Convoy Commander who had navigated through far worse conditions in Afghanistan, and she knew exactly how to get 32 children home safely when the obvious routes became death traps. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden expertise and maternal protection, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who continue serving in unexpected ways. Sarah Mitchell woke up at 4:30 a.m. on that Tuesday in February, same as every school day for the past 14 years. At 52 years old, she had the morning routine down to a science. Coffee, check the weather forecast, review her bus route, and be at the bus depot by 5:45 to perform her pre-trip inspection on Bus 7, the vehicle that had been her responsibility since she started driving for the Cascade County School District. The weather forecast that morning showed snow, but nothing unusual for Montana in February. Light accumulation expected, roads passable with caution. Sarah had driven through plenty of Montana winters. A little snow wasn't going to disrupt the routine that got 32 kids from their rural homes to Mountain View Elementary School and back safely every day. What the forecast didn't mention was that the weather system was moving faster and intensifying more than the models predicted. By the time Sarah completed her morning route and delivered the children to school at 8:15 a.m., the snow had already accumulated 3 inches. By noon, when school administrators were monitoring conditions and deciding whether to dismiss early, it was 6 inches and still coming down hard. The decision came at 1 p.m., early dismissal. Parents were notified, buses were called back to schools, and Sarah was pulling up to Mountain View Elementary by 1:30 to load her 32 students for the trip home. What nobody knew, not the school administrators, not the parents, not even the other bus drivers who'd worked alongside Sarah for over a decade, was that before Sarah Mitchell became a school bus driver in rural Montana, she had been Captain Sarah Mitchell, United States Army, 88th Transportation Company. 5 years active duty, including 2 deployments to Afghanistan, where she commanded convoy operations through some of the most dangerous and unpredictable terrain in the world. Sarah had driven and commanded vehicles through sandstorms, hostile fire, IED threats, mountain passes, and conditions that would make most civilian drivers pull over and wait for help. When she left the Army and came home to Montana, she'd wanted work that felt meaningful but peaceful. Driving school bus gave her that, the same sense of mission and responsibility, but with children's laughter instead of convoy radio chatter, and the biggest threat being weather rather than roadside bombs. As Sarah loaded her 32 students that afternoon, ranging from 5-year-old kindergartners to 12-year-old 6th graders, she noticed the snow was falling harder than it had been even an hour ago. The parking lot already had 8 inches of accumulation, and visibility was decreasing. "Miss Sarah, is it safe to drive?" asked Emma, a 10-year-old who always sat in the 3rd row and worried about everything. "We'll be just fine, sweetheart," Sarah said with her usual warm smile. "I've driven through plenty of snow. Everyone buckle up and we'll have you home before you know it." The first part of Sarah's route went normally. She dropped off the town kids, the ones who lived within 5 miles of the school on maintained roads. But the second part of her route was different. 12 of her students lived in the rural areas north of town, accessed by county roads that were lower priority for snowplows. In good weather, it was a beautiful drive through Montana ranch country. In conditions like this, those roads could become treacherous quickly. By 2:15 p.m., Sarah was heading north on County Road 343 with 12 students still on the bus when she noticed something that made her military training kick in. The road ahead wasn't just snow-covered, it was developing the kind of drifting patterns that indicated dangerous conditions. The wind was picking up, creating whiteout conditions where snow wasn't just falling but being blown horizontally across the road. Sarah had seen sandstorms in Afghanistan create similar visibility problems. The difference was that in Afghanistan she'd had convoy vehicles behind her, radio contact with base, and the option to stop and wait. Here she had 12 children depending on her to get them home safely, and stopping in these conditions could mean being stranded overnight. She slowed down, turned on her emergency flashers, and made a quick assessment of her options. The main road, County Road 343, continued north for another 15 miles before reaching the first of her remaining stops. It was the standard route, the one parents expected her to take. But Sarah could see what was developing ahead, a section of road that ran through open prairie with no windbreaks, where drifting would be worst. In another 30 minutes, that road would be completely impassable. Sarah's mind automatically shifted into the same tactical planning mode she'd used to route convoys through hostile territory, assess the threat, evaluate alternatives, choose the route that gets everyone home safely, even if it's not the obvious one. "Hey kids," Sarah said, her voice calm and cheerful, "we're going to take a different way home today. It might take a little longer, but it'll be safer." "Why, Miss Sarah?" asked Tyler, a sixth grader who sat near the front and liked to know the reasons for everything. "Because I know a better route when the weather gets tricky. Trust me, okay?" Instead of continuing north on County Road 343, Sarah turned east on a smaller road that nobody would think was a better option. It was narrower, unpaved in sections, and wound through areas that weren't on the standard bus route. But Sarah knew something that the route planners and other drivers didn't know. This road followed natural terrain breaks that provided wind protection. The drifting would be minimal, and the road surface would be more stable. She knew this because she'd spent her first year back in Montana driving every back road in the county, the same way she'd once studied maps of Afghan provinces. Old habits from military route planning. Know your terrain, identify alternatives, prepare for the unexpected. She'd never needed that knowledge for her bus route before, until now. The children were starting to notice that things weren't normal. The snow was coming down so hard they could barely see beyond the hood of the bus. The wind was rocking the vehicle, and they were definitely not on their usual route home. "Miss Sarah, I don't recognize this road," Emma said, her voice tight with worry. "I know, sweetie, but I promise I know where we're going. How about we sing some songs while we drive? Who wants to start?" For the next 45 minutes, Sarah navigated roads that weren't on any official bus route, using terrain knowledge and military navigation skills while keeping 12 increasingly nervous children calm with songs, stories, and the kind of steady reassurance that came from someone who'd once commanded convoys through war zones. She made decisions that would have seemed wrong to any other driver, taking a road that appeared to go in the wrong direction because she knew it would loop back with better protection from wind, choosing a route through ranch land on a private road that she'd gotten permission years ago to use in emergencies, making a series of turns that looked random but were actually a carefully planned path through the safest terrain. At one point, she passed the main county road, the one she would normally have used, and the children could see through brief breaks in the snow that it was completely blocked by drifts. Cars were stranded. The road was impassable. "Miss Sarah, look. The regular road is blocked," Tyler said, pointing. "I know, buddy. That's why we took this way." By 3:30 p.m., Sarah had successfully delivered all 12 rural students to their homes. Each parent who met the bus had the same shocked expression. They hadn't expected the bus to make it through at all. Several had been preparing to drive out to find their children, despite the dangerous conditions. At the last stop, a rancher named Tom Henderson, who had 2 kids on Sarah's route, stood in his driveway looking at the bus with amazement. "Sarah, the county just announced that all roads north of town are closed. They're saying nothing can get through. How did you make it?" Sarah helped his children down the bus steps, making sure they were safely in their father's care before answering. "I know some back ways. Different route than usual, but everyone's home safe." "But how did you know those roads would be passable? Even the experienced drivers are stranded." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said simply, "I used to do route planning in a different kind of weather. Different country, different threats, but same principle. Find the path that gets everyone home safely." Tom looked at her with new understanding. Something in her tone, her confidence, the way she'd navigated impossible conditions, told him there was more to his children's bus driver than he'd ever realized. Over the next few days, as the storm cleared and the story spread through the small Montana community, the full picture emerged. Sarah Mitchell, the friendly bus driver who knew every child's name and always had encouraging words, was a decorated Army veteran who had commanded transportation operations through some of the most dangerous territory in Afghanistan. The local newspaper ran a story, "School bus driver's military experience saves 12 students in storm." Parents who had been terrified that their children were stranded in whiteout conditions learned that their kids had actually been in the safest hands possible, someone who had trained for years to navigate dangerous conditions and protect the people in her care. "I had no idea," said Jennifer Parker, Emma's mother, when she called Sarah to thank her. "Emma talks about you all the time, but she just says you're nice and funny. She never mentioned that you're basically a tactical driving expert." Sarah laughed. That's not really something that comes up during regular bus routes. I'm just the lady who drives the bus and makes sure everyone gets to school and home safely. The military training is just background that I hope I never have to use. But that day, I needed it. The school district superintendent called Sarah into his office a week later. Sarah, I've been reviewing what happened during the storm. You made route decisions that weren't standard protocol. You took roads that aren't on your approved route. Some people are questioning whether you followed proper procedures. Sarah sat calmly in the chair across from his desk. Sir, standard procedures would have left 12 children stranded on an impassable road in whiteout conditions. I assessed the tactical situation and chose the route that guaranteed everyone's safety. Every child was delivered home safely. That was my mission, and I completed it. The superintendent looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. Sarah, I'm not questioning your judgment. I'm asking if you'd be willing to help us revise our emergency protocols. Clearly, you see things about route planning and weather assessment that our standard training doesn't cover. Would you be interested in helping train other drivers? Over the following months, Sarah began sharing her knowledge with other bus drivers in the district. Not as military training, but as practical skills for route assessment, emergency decision-making, and staying calm under pressure. She taught them to read terrain for wind protection, to identify alternative routes before emergencies happened, to trust their judgment when conditions changed rapidly. The thing about convoy operations, Sarah explained to a room of bus drivers during a training session, is that you're always responsible for the people you're transporting. Whether it's soldiers in Afghanistan or kids in Montana, the mission is the same. Get everyone home safely, no matter what obstacles you encounter. 14 years after leaving the Army, Sarah still drives Bus 7 on the same route through rural Montana. She still knows every child's name, still has encouraging words, still makes the drive feel safe and routine even in challenging conditions. The children on her bus don't know about her military service unless their parents tell them, and that's fine with Sarah. But the other drivers know, the parents know, the school administrators know, and on difficult weather days when other drivers are worried about road conditions, they'll ask Sarah's advice. What do you think? Is it safe? And Sarah will assess the conditions with eyes that once evaluated threat levels in Afghan mountain passes and give them an honest answer. Because true service doesn't end when you leave the military. It just finds new missions. For Sarah Mitchell, that mission is making sure 32 children get to school and home safely every single day, and being ready when conditions require more than standard training, when they require the kind of tactical thinking, route planning, and crisis management that can only come from someone who has commanded operations through far more dangerous situations than Montana snowstorms. The plaque on Sarah's dashboard, visible to her but not to the students, is simple: Mission 32 Souls, safe delivery, every day. It's not military language, not official Army protocol, but it's the same commitment she made when she wore the uniform, adapted to the work she does now. So tell me, have you ever discovered that someone you saw every day had a hidden background that explained their competence? A teacher, a coach, a bus driver who turned out to have expertise you never suspected? Share their story in the comments below, because these are the stories that matter. Veterans who never stopped serving, who found new ways to protect others, who discovered that the skills learned in combat can be applied to keeping children safe. If this story moved you, subscribe to The Human Stories for more accounts of quiet heroism and veterans who continue their missions in unexpected ways. Until next time, remember that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear bus driver vests and safety reflectors, and they're ready to use every skill they have to bring your children home safely.